Quigley in 5, underwater in the yellow lane.
Jazz Carling of Great Britain.
Quigley goes through.
The silver to Jazz Carling. Wonderful silver medal for Great Britain.
Welcome to the Honest Athletes podcast with
Lauren Quigley
and Jazz Carling. So excited to be back talking to this guest on episode 3 of the Honest Athletes podcast. One of my favourite moments of the Tokyo Olympics, where he came away with 2 gold medals in the pool at just 21 years old. And probably the best family celebration I have ever seen in a video. Welcome to the podcast, Tom Dean, aka Dino.
Thank you very much.
We have got to talk about that video because that was on all the news. It made it everywhere. Like, it kind of gives me goosebumps now just thinking about all the support. What was your reaction when you saw like the big uproar, family, friends celebrating at home?
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy. And you're right, that video went completely viral, blew up. I saw it all over Twitter. All sort of Gary Lineker was sharing it and Andy Murray was sharing it. So it was really amazing. It was really, really special. But I didn't even know that was going on when I was racing. Some of the 200 free didn't have a clue that there were, 100 people in my back garden at 2:30 in the morning watching me swim, and producing this absolutely insane reaction video. But luckily, someone decided to flick a camera on when it happened. And I've got this awesome video that I can always, have with me for forever. I've actually got a still of the exact moment that I won, and I've got it printed out in a big A2 frame that I'm gonna hang on my wall because it's so special. But it was amazing, and when I first saw that video, it was really, really emotional. Obviously, got back to my apartment in the village after I just won the 200 free, and emotions were running high, and then I saw that, and it was really special. So it's like the perfect end to a pretty perfect day of swimming success. So really holds a really special place in my heart.
It is mad because sorry, Lauren, but like with, I can't even remember seeing my mum and dad. I was trying to look for them in the crowd. So even though like the Olympics were so different, like you've got those memories and like you can see it all on video of like your family and that celebration, that moment. Whereas I was like trying to find my mum and dad in the crowd. I had no idea what their reaction was. So I guess at least you had that memory. And how was it with no family in the stands and the empty stands? Just touching on that, I guess, because we've spoke about the video, and that's why obviously we do have a video of your family and friends. But what was it like competing with not many people in the crowds, just coaches and swimmers?
It was obviously strange, but at the same time, we hadn't competed in front of a crowd for 18 months at that point. And on top of that, I'd never swum at an Olympic Games before, so I'd never experienced an Olympic crowd before. So I didn't really have any benchmark to judge it off the back of. I think we'd almost grown accustomed to swimming, without a massive arena noise, without, 15,000 people or whatever supporting over the past year and a half. All the races we did at ISL and everything had no crowd, and all the prep meets had no crowd. British Trials was like, you could hear a pin drop there. It was, seeing the aquatic centre that dead. It was like a graveyard. So it wasn't anything new. And I think the acoustics of the building, even with 1,000 or 2,000 people in it, swimmers, athletes, support staff, was still quite special. And on top of that, just the size of this structure and the size of the occasion, the commentators, everything made it, and actually a pretty special atmosphere. Having my family not there was probably the toughest thing. I always look up to them when I'm about to start racing, when I finish racing, or when I'm on the podium. So it was tough them not being there, the biggest race of my life. But, I know they were very much there in spirit, and the video is testament to that.
I have so many questions, but one of them, the first one I wanted to ask you as soon as I heard that we were having you on, was what's it like when Claire Balding asks Matt Richards how his third leg is? That's got to be quite funny, right?
It was quite funny. I saw her on Saturday night, actually, at the Pride of Britain Awards, and she came up and we had a good laugh about it. The thing is, because she interviews, obviously, both of us, and she refers to Matt having this phenomenal third leg, but then the camera pans to me, obviously, trying to hold in, bursting out laughing. Keeping in mind, this was like midnight, 1 a.m. in Tokyo after we'd just won the relay that morning. So I was knackered. I wasn't like that on the ball, and I just really had to kind of hold it in some tiny apartment in the village. Yeah, it's quite funny. I think I've had more people come up to me and say your third leg is phenomenal than, you know, well done at the Olympics or something like that. But to be honest, there's worse things for people to come up and say to you. So, you know, it's funny either way.
Oh, definitely. You mentioned your family before, and so if we take it back to being a bit more serious now, we want to learn a lot about you. And I was doing a bit of research on you, and your family seemed to be such a key role in your swimming. Has this been all the way through? How did you? I think me and Jazz love to go back to the start and kind of understand how you got into the sport, and then what their role has been in your whole journey up until this point.
Yeah, family's always played a really important role in my swimming journey. I've got 4 brothers and sisters. We used to all go to training together at 5:30 in the morning, and all bundle in the back of our people carrier together. So it's always been a family affair that we've always done together. My older sister was very much my training partner throughout all my age group years, and my biggest inspiration throughout that time. You know, to the point where she stopped me from quitting the sport when I was 14 years old, because I was very close to that point. And the work ethic, dedication and commitment she had, you know, is completely unparalleled. I've never really seen anything like it. Never really shared a lane with anyone that driven. So a massive, massive influence in those pretty crucial developmental years as an age grouper. And then on top of that, you know, my mum being there for me throughout the last decade, and being at every competition, flying to, you know, flying to Israel to come and watch me swim at my first European juniors, just all over the shop, and being there every step of the way has obviously played a really important role, making sure I've got good nutrition, you know, making sure I'm ready and I'm ready to go to the pool. I remember she'd always say, if we're willing to get up and go to training and put ourselves through a grind, you know, those early morning sessions, the least she could do is get us up and get us in the car and get us to the pool. So yeah, a very important part of my life and a very important part of my swimming career.
Tom, like, I could literally just listen to you talk like all day. You just talk so well, and like I just love hearing all your stories. But I think if there are some like kids that are listening, and you did say about at 14 there was like, oh, I don't know whether I want to do this anymore, which is quite common. I speak to a lot of swimmers now. You kind of get to that age, do I want to carry on with it? Can you talk us a little bit about that stage? And I guess what you said, your sister really helped support you. Did you have kind of like those dreams thinking, oh, the Olympics, were you thinking that far ahead? Or was it just like, oh, I'm kind of going swimming with my family from a swimming club?
It was never, it was never on the horizon. Being a professional swimmer was never on the horizon. It was never something I was striving for. My mum didn't take us to training so we could become Olympic champions. You know, she took us to training for, you know, our health and well-being and our water safety, and because we love the sport at the end of the day. You know, I think every teenage swimmer at some point has struggled with the hours that are required for this sport. You know, they've struggled with the sacrifices you've got to make. You struggled with not being able to live that normal teenage life that obviously so many people want at that age. So it's tough, and it does require a lot of dedication. When I was 14 years old, because of the nature of age group swimming, people's developmental rates are all over the place. Some people, you know, have amazing growth spurts when they're 12 years old and do some crazy quick times and then struggle for the next few years. And when I was 14 years old, I was very much in one of those more difficult periods. And coupled with that, my older sister was training amazingly. She was getting medals at nationals, everything I wanted, except I wasn't putting in the work to get there. And I remember I sat down with my coach, Paul Lloyd at Maidenhead, and I said, look, Paul, how do I try and be like Connie, my older sister? How do I try and, you know, get these national medals? That's what I want. And he's just said, if you want to race like her, you've got to train like her. And that was such an important, you know, defining moment in my entire swimming journey, not just my age group, but my entire swimming journey, when I realized that you very much get out what you put in. And it's something I've carried forward with me into my senior years as well. And, you know, you can't shy away from the hard work. You know, my two coaches, Paul and Dave, are very similar in their coaching philosophies in that respect. And obviously you'll be able to vouch for that. Dave doesn't shy away from the hard work either, and it's something that you've got to do. And if you want to have that success, then you've got to be able to, put your body through it and put your body on the line. So it is tough, and there was definitely a difficult period during my age group career, but it's never a straight line of progression, especially during those years. And to any swimmer who's watching this who is going through a tough time at the moment, just stick with it, and always say focus on yourself. Let everyone else around you do whatever they're doing. If you can just listen to your coach and focus on yourself, then that's the most important thing.
Jazz, I don't think we need to be on this podcast. I think Tom could just talk and just everyone listen for Tom for an hour. The way you speak is amazing, and I definitely agree with Jazz. So obviously, like you said, swimming is not a straight line. There's lots to it. There's lots of ups, there's lots of downs, and that's all part and parcel of the amazingness of being in sport. What was your transition then like from junior to senior once you'd made that decision of, okay, I need to get my head down here and train, a bit harder, more like my sister?
Mm-hmm. I think my transition from junior to senior swimming, obviously aligned with my transition from Maidenhead to the Bath National Centre. Maidenhead being a relatively small age group club. I was the first swimmer from Maidenhead to ever make a nationals. It was that kind of scale and that kind of size when I joined. And, it served me from 8 years old when I joined all the way up to becoming European champion on the relay at 18 years old in Glasgow. So, I never changed clubs. I never went to a big club. And I remember, obviously, Jazz, we had this conversation a few years ago about, coming from these clubs and still being able to make it into the senior world of swimming. And that being a path that's very much available to club swimmers. So it was a big transition when I made that move from Maidenhead to Bath, and obviously a national centre. You've got everything else that comes with a national centre. It's not just the pool training, but it's the nutrition and it's the psychology. You've got the strength condition and the physios, the soft tissue, everything that comes with being a national centre, and all these extra people, this whole team around you to help you get these 1% or 0.1% that senior swimming comes down to. But at the end of the day, Paul produced an 18-year-old swimmer that he was able to hand over to any national centre, any senior level program in the UK or in the world, and I was able to hold my own, stick with these people, do the training that was required of me. And to be honest, as long as you have a pool and a lane and water, the training is never going to change. I was able to do training at Bath National Centre because of the preparation work I'd done at Maidenhead, and I was able to make that very smooth progression. It was just all the other external factors that really, were the big shifts and the big changes that I realised when I moved to Bath.
I do always find, like, even when I talk to you, what a true credit you are to swimming club. And you obviously say how well you work with the coach and how much the club has done for you to help you get you where you are. And yeah, as I said, we've both gone through from very small programs. I was at a very small swimming club. And then made the decision at kind of 16, so quite early on. What was like your decision making and moving to the Bath National Centre? Am I right? Is your sister over in America or did some training in America?
Yeah. So my older sister did go down that route and went out to America like a lot of swimmers do. It's very glamorous. They offer the world on the plate when you get to that age. And I had coaches emailing me, DMing me on Instagram. We'll fly you out. We'll treat you like celebrities, we'll take you out for this week-long trip all around America, pay for everything for 4 years, all food, all board paid for, and give you this top-level education. When I was 17, 18 years old, I wasn't too fussed about my swimming. My main focus was my academics. I wanted to go and get a mechanical engineering degree, and I wanted to go and get the best mechanical engineering degree in the world. And when I had all these people offering me these amazing degrees for free for 4 years out in America, it was so tempting, and it's such an attractive offer. And a lot of swimmers up and down the country get to that age and get offered that. And I'm not one to say British swimming are wrong in this department. I think it's an area for improvement for sure. And I think they need to advertise their national centres better. And I think it should be something that age group swimmers within the UK are striving for. Instead of reaching that age, word getting out that I was looking at America, half of British swimming descending on Maidenhead to try and convince me to stay. I don't think that's the best approach. Within the space of a week, I think I had 4 or 5 senior British swimming members on poolside in this tiny leisure centre in Maidenhead, taking me out for coffee and telling me that I needed to stay in the UK. So it was an approach that I don't think is the best way to go about things with British swimming. I was very close to going to America. I went to the whole recruiting trip. I got offered full scholarships, the full works. And I was going to go, but my coach, Paul, sat me down. He said, look, I think you've got potential to go all the way and to, be a great senior athlete. And he said, look, I don't say that lightly. I'm not trying to keep you at Maidenhead. I'm not trying to be one of those coaches who keeps you in an age group program for too long for their own pride. He said, you're going to get to 18 years old and I'm going to hand you over to a national centre and I'm going to step away, because he's done his job at that point, preparing me to be a senior swimmer. But he said, if you want to get the best out of your swimming, then you need to stay in the UK and you need to be at a national centre. That's the best place for your swimming. So at that point, because I had so much faith and so much trust in Paul as my coach, over the years, the relationship we'd built up, that I took his advice completely and wholly on board. And it was very much a question of Bath or Loughborough at that point. And that's when it came down to coaches, and Dave was the natural choice for me. Got on super well. He's a great character, really similar training styles. Obviously, he'd done amazing things with all of his previous athletes, yourself included, Jazz, on a range of different events. And it was just like the perfect match. And I count my lucky stars every day that I made that choice. I stayed in the UK and I went and trained with Dave instead of going to some random training program out in America. So it was a tough decision to make. And there were a lot of factors that really kind of played a role in that final choice. But I can pretty much say for certain, I think I made the right choice.
From the nation and from myself, thank you, Paul, for keeping touch.
Yeah, honestly.
We thank you. We owe you everything. Get Paul knighted or something. He needs
literally.
That. Paul sounds like an absolute legend. Do you still speak to Paul?
I had a swim camp with him on Saturday. I went along and helped out. He was coaching some kids starts and turns, and I said I'd come along and help him, and gave a little Q&A and stuff. So yeah, we're very close still. That
is amazing. Jazz, what are we going to do with Tommy? He's like an angel, isn't he? That's amazing. So obviously then you're at Bath. What was your first kind of phase at Bath like? Did you feel a little bit like a rabbit in headlights, or did you settle in quite quick? What was your training group like? How did you find that experience? Because I know there'll be lots of people wanting to know this answer.
Yeah, my training group was amazing. As a young athlete coming up, wanting, having big aspirations on the international stage, to be surrounded by Olympians is incredible. It's the best thing you could possibly imagine. I was a bit starstruck, obviously. And even when I went to Europeans in 2018, I was on the relay final, which I completely wasn't expecting to be doing. That was such a surprise. I thought I was going along to do a 200 heat of that meet. I wasn't prepared for a relay final at all. But I remember being in the call room with Jimmy and Duncan and being starstruck. So to move to a national centre with all these Olympians was just absolutely incredible, and so special as a kid, wanting to really just soak everything in and take everything on board. I remember having a strength and conditioning program written out for me and thinking this is the best thing ever, because it tells me what to do. Before that, my strength and conditioning program was we'd finish the Saturday morning training in Maidenhead, we'd walk up the stairs to the gym with my mates and we'd just see who could dumbbell press the most. That was the complete entirety of my strength and conditioning. So all of a sudden I had this program written for me. I was like, all I've got to do is stick to this program and I'm going to become a better swimmer. It's so simple, I thought, and it was so cool. I had all this offered me, physio on hand, soft tissue on hand, all this stuff that I take for granted, not take for granted, but I'm so used to now, was just absolutely incredible. A 50-meter pool every single day, instead of once a fortnight, was like a dream come true. So it was so exciting. I absolutely loved it. And, it was like the best thing for an athlete in my position at the time. It was challenging because I was trying to balance a mechanical engineering degree at the time at Bath, which was a very demanding degree. And the way the National Centre works is it's not designed to work around a uni program. It's very much focused on athletes who are full-time athletes. So that was the thing I struggled with the most. Obviously, I just moved away from home, which was quite challenging. It's another thing to take on board. So it was a big change in a very short space of time. It took me a good few weeks and months to adjust and really find my feet. But yeah, it was exciting. And, Dave was really great, helped me really settle in, was very accommodating of my degree as well. I remember I had Siobhan in my group who was really, welcoming, really friendly, and kind of took me under her wing. And then I had Tom Derbyshire, who's, one of my closest friends even now. I'm seeing him tomorrow for a coffee, and a really, really great training partner, someone who's literally willing to put his life on the line for the training that he did. And, a real grafter that I just bounce off so well. So it's brilliant. I loved it. And I really enjoyed, being in a position where I had the opportunity to be the best swimmer I possibly could, which is what National Centre is all about.
It's funny because I even remember obviously still being now kind of close friends with Dave McNulty, who was my old coach, and being able to go out for dinner with him, who's now your coach. We talk about Dave. And I remember even obviously when you joined and he was saying, look, Jazz, I've got this great swimmer. He's doing this degree and we're having to try and manage all of his training, and we can only get him in for a certain amount of sessions. So it even brings back memories of talking to Dave. But for me, even from when you first joined and talking to Dave, he saw the biggest potential in you. And I remember him saying to me, and I said it around the Olympics, he said, Jazz, this guy can win the Olympics.
Can I just interject? You said that to me, Jazz. You told me that David said that this guy is going to be, I was like, what's going on?
It is mad because I think Dave obviously had seen the potential that you'd had. Had he relayed this in you? Did you feel that he had that belief in you, and were you on that journey together, or was it as kind of you started to progress?
So Dave always has complete belief, and that's something I really value about him and his coaching style. You will have had one-on-one meetings with him as well, just like I have one-on-one meetings with him. It might be at the start of a new block, it might be hard, 2 or 3 times throughout a season, but it's they're few and far between, and they're he really gets to reset, you get to refocus, and he speaks to you one-on-one. And then when you're in the training environment, he obviously just treats you like any other swimmer. He gets to pull you aside and he has these one-on-one meetings with me, which I really like. And I always come with a big load of questions. We talk about the block of work we're doing, talk about what we did before, what went well, what didn't. And I remember after about the first year being at Bath, when I started doing more 200 freestyle work, and it started to kind of pick up a little bit more. And I was doing sets, I think was catching Dave's eye a little bit. And I remember we went for a coffee in a Boston Tea Party down in Kingsmead Square in Bath. And we sat down. I remember we were sitting on the benches, and he said, I'm only going to say this once, and I'm not going to say it again, but I think you could become Olympic champion. He said, I think you can go 144 and I think you can be Olympic champion. And that was months and months. That was well over a year ago. It was a long time ago. And I remember I went straight back. I was living with Darbs at the time, with Tom Derbyshire. I went back and I was like, oh, Darbs, I've just had this amazing meeting with Dave. He said I could go 144. And I was like, that would be incredible. That would set the world on fire. I could win the Olympics, all this kind of stuff. And he only ever says it once. And then you go into the training environment, he treats you like a normal athlete, But I know that that's what he believes in. But he obviously is not, it's not something he's going to repeat every single day. He says it and he parks it. And then when I go into the training environment, I know that he's got this belief. And that's, I think, the best way and the best approach. And I really value that approach in him. And throughout our meetings, in the lead up to the Olympics, he would say, obviously, I've got complete belief in you. And then I think it was a week out from the games. We were just about to go into the village, or we just moved into the village. And he sat me down and he said, look, mate, you've got to think about winning this, because you can't go into Olympic final and win without having thought about it and without having processed the idea. No one can ever do that. And the thing is about Dave is, because he's had so much Olympic success, he's got so many Olympic medals to his name, I value his opinion and what he has to say so much, just like I did with my club coach. When you have so much trust and so much faith in someone, you completely buy into their program and you value what they say so much, which is, it's something I only say of very few people who are very close to me. Then when they say something as momentous as you could win the Olympics, then you believe it with your whole heart. So when he said something like that to me, it was really, really special, because obviously I'm like, he is speaking from a place of experience. He knows what Olympic success looks like, and he's saying that about me. So it was really, really exciting. And that's the approach that he's taken over the last few years. And I guess he was like some kind of future seeing, he had some future seeing ability, because it all worked out in the end. So, yeah.
Mystic Dave.
Exactly.
I was lucky enough to experience Nutty or Dave on teams and stuff like that, and just loved seeing him around his athletes. He was so excited to be just in that role, and obviously amazing at it, and has the success with his name. So it's so nice to hear you talk about him. I love it when Jazz talks about him, and again, it's lovely to hear you talk about him, and just a great guy, another guy who needs to be ignited probably. But no, it's great to hear. So now we sort of go a bit further on the journey, and success through senior, but I want to get to the Olympics, because I want to get to COVID hits, and I want to know what that experience was like, because this is unwritten. This is first time for all of it. So what was it like when COVID first hits and it's like no swimming?
Yeah, it was obviously tough. So it was around March time 2020. We just got back from the Australia training camp. We'd been out there for 3 weeks, and obviously there was talk of COVID in the world. We had the Edinburgh International meet that weekend. Got back from Australia in the morning, at the start of the week, Edinburgh International that weekend. So jet lagged all over the place. But I'd done the best 6 months of training I'd ever done in my life. I'd gone full time on the swimming. I'd put my degree on hold. I'd done 2 altitude camps. I'd done a warm weather camp. Hadn't been ill, hadn't been injured, been there every single day. And I get to Edinburgh and I go 1:46.0, massive PB when I was tired and jet lagged. And I was like, oh, this is so exciting. 3 weeks out from trials, hadn't tapered yet. We're just about to start taper. I was like, this is so, so cool. Well, the Olympics this year, it couldn't have gone better. And then we get back to training on Monday morning, and Dave goes, oh, right, so the country's obviously going into lockdown, all this talk of it. So the Edinburgh International meet was the last public thing with crowds for 18 months, was actually that swimming competition. And Dave goes, right, so let's talk of this. So he's like, look, go home, go home now, take the rest of the week off, because trials isn't going to happen. So they'll give you a week off now, and I'll see you on Monday morning, and we'll go from there. And we never saw him on Monday morning, because we didn't see him for 12 more weeks till June, when we finally, got out of lockdown and got this return to training program in. So it was just, as you said, completely uncharted territory. It's completely new to everyone. And luckily, we're able to get back in June as part of the Elite Sport Return to Training program. But over those 12 weeks, I was doing like Zoom circuits. I was doing burpees in my sitting room. I was getting out on my bike, which I was actually really enjoyed, to be fair. I found like an absolute love for road cycling. I found this old rowing erg up in my loft with like these big wooden foot pedals, and I like gave that a go. It was good, and it was like I enjoyed keeping fit in different ways. But obviously, it was a bit heartbreaking that the Olympics got cancelled and then postponed, and then there was all the uncertainty about it. So it was an interesting time. There were many positives and a lot of negatives as well. But tried to keep fit as much as I could, and then we were back in around the June time to begin the new year of build. But with all the protocols we had to follow, so many protocols. Trying to train in a lane while COVID is absolutely rife. And keep social distance, masks everywhere. The STV where we train up in Bath was literally like a graveyard. It was so quiet, no members of the public. Dave found it really difficult because he thrives in a really busy, Bath like training environment. He loves the fact that it's a leisure centre. He loves people going for like swimming lessons. All the students who are using the gym, he like really enjoys that. So that, on top of all the protocols, people telling him how to do his job and how to coach his swimmers, which, if you know Dave, he won't be the biggest fan of. He likes to stick to his ways and stuff. So it was tough. It was tough for us, but it was tough for him as well. And there was some really challenging points throughout that year where almost COVID and, the fear of COVID and the fear of catching it way outshone the performance side and what we were trying to achieve at the Olympics. And Dave always said, the Olympics will happen. We will be stepping up there. And, if we don't get the medals that we need to get because we've been prioritizing, all these protocols and putting performance second, then at the end of the day, people are going to suffer, and British swimming is going to suffer, and the UK sport will suffer. And, there's no point, you don't get any medals for saying, but it was really tough. We had all these protocols and everything. So it was a really difficult balance at that time. And it was a really difficult balance between performance and COVID protocols. And I think that was the toughest part of getting back into the pool after the pandemic.
And even you say building back in and all the things, having to adapt your training, it was, I guess, a new normal, getting used to it. But I guess after months of doing circuits, this and all different things, it was probably just great to get back in and actually start again and refresh. But as you said about with training, you do train with James Guy, who was also known for a world champion freestyler. And heading into the trials, there were a lot of really fast men's 200 freestyle. How was it, I guess, training with James, we say Jimmy, next to you, pushing each other day in, day out? And I guess heading into trials, were you feeling confident heading into the trials, feeling like you were kind of ready to get that spot?
Yeah, training with Jimmy is great. Like you said, world champion 200 freestyler. Like, what more could you want being a 200 freestyler, trying to, break onto the senior scene? Just like I said, when I joined the Bath National Centre, having all these amazing athletes around you. So it's absolutely brilliant. The drive he had during the Olympic year was unlike anything else. Even, he told me personally, unlike anything else he's ever had. He was so committed to the job at hand. He was, found this like second wind under Dave as his new coach. Really, really exciting. We pushed ourselves so well. Going into the trials, however, I wasn't very confident because of how disrupted my training block had been over the 6 months prior, because I'd had 6 or 7 weeks out of the water for COVID. And on top of that, both times I got COVID, it was, 2-week build, half an hour sessions, 45-minute sessions for 2 weeks. It was such a gradual build. I'd missed out on so much engine work that I was so unsure of where I was going to be come trials. So I had to taper without a block of work behind me, which is such a nerve-wracking position to be in as a swimmer. That's the last thing you want. And that's the only thing that really gets me nervous, is knowing I haven't done the work I ought to. So it was a tough position to be in, especially with an event like 200 free. I had the 4 and the 1 as well. My 4 didn't go brilliantly. My 1 didn't go exactly how I wanted it to. So I hadn't even qualified for the Olympics come the last day of trials. And the 200 free came along, which is like this blue ribbon event within British swimming, all the commentators been hyping it up. And I knew that it was going to be such a quick heat to make it back. And everyone wants a slice of this 4x2 cake. Everyone wants a bit of it, even to get heat swim, obviously, because it's such a strong team. So it was like, God, it's going to be so tough to even make it back. And it was a 147 to make it back, top 8 in the UK. It's an event that's just been getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And obviously it's always been Jimmy and Duncan getting those 2 spots for the whole of, as long as I can remember. It's always been Jimmy and Duncan getting those 2 spots for the individual 200 free, that is. So, Dave had sat me down in one of our one-to-ones, and he did say, throughout the years, like, look, you're going to have to take that spot away from someone, and you know what, you're going to have to take it away from Jimmy. Looking at the way Duncan's going, you're going to have to take your spot away from your training partner. So it was tough, and you kind of have to switch off the friendship for 5 minutes when you get into a final like that, just like I did in the Olympic final with Duncan, one of my closest pals on any team we go on. But, when you step on the blocks, it's just another competitor at the end of the day. So it's a bit of a tough thing to kind of get your head around. But, I swam the race exactly how I wanted it to. Like, I dropped all the way down to that 144, number 2 fastest time in the world. Broke what had been the British record previously, but obviously Duncan was a tenth of a second quicker. So it went better than expected. And luckily I was able to book that second place spot on the team and also obviously on the relay team. And I think Jimmy was actually a bit relieved. I remember listening to him talk after it. He said he could just focus on that 4x2 relay now, and a bit of the pressure had been taken off, and he kind of handed the baton over slightly. And luckily I was able to take that baton and, run all the way to Tokyo and get the job done there as well. So, yeah, it was an interesting meet trials.
I do remember hearing or reading that you did have an interesting run into trials. It's interesting isn't the word I would have used at the time. I'm going to tell you straight, it's definitely not the word I would have gone for. But surely, or you tell me, did that give you confidence, that lead in, to have a lead in like that and still perform that way, then going into a hopefully going to happen Olympics later that year?
It did actually. It's actually a really good question. It did, because I knew that if I could go 1:44.5 off the back of all this disruption, and Dave said the exact same thing to me, he said, and you could be the second fastest person in the world at that point. So imagine what you could do with a solid block of training in the lead up to the Olympics. And that's exactly what I got, was a solid block of training in the lead up to the Olympics. And I think that's why I owe the 0.35 of a second that I was able to take off in the Olympic final. And, luckily it was 0.35 and it wasn't 0.31, because that would have been the difference between a gold and a silver. But yeah, that solid block of work was so important. And, I owe the gold medal down to that. So yeah, it was interesting having a dodgy run in. It kind of made me a bit nervous in the lead up to trials, but then when I did a good time, it actually gave me slightly more confidence than if I'd had a perfect run in. Yeah.
And so heading into the Olympics, obviously it's not just about the work you do in the pool. I know Dave can challenge you in so many different ways and try and get the best out of you and really test you. But it's obviously all about all the other things, from your strength and conditioning, the nutrition, psychology, all the different parts. Was it a smooth run into the Olympics? Were you just consistent with everything, or was there certain areas that you were really focused on to try and get a bit stronger at?
It was a completely consistent running. I remember saying to my girlfriend, actually, just after trials, and I had a week off, went out celebrated my birthday, had a really good time, got to the end of that week, and I literally said to her, I was like, look, for the next 3 months, I've literally got to live like a monk. I've got to do everything perfectly. I've got to get 8 hours of sleep. I've got to eat well. I've got to make sure I get the best out of every single training session. I've got to make sure that I'm rested and recovered so I can gain the benefits from the evening's work the night before and get the most out of the following morning sessions, because I've literally been handed this golden ticket. Got so lucky that I've managed to make this team with such disruption running into the trials, that I owe it to myself to give myself the best possible chance at Tokyo. So I literally, and that's exactly what I did. I was doing sessions that I'd never done before. I was going times in training I'd never done before. Made sure I got PBs in the gym when it got round to 1 rep max week. I made sure my nutrition was brilliant. I did extra stretching. I did extra physio. I didn't get injured. Didn't get ill. I was on top of all my supplements. All these tiny little 1%ers that go into making those extremely fine margins, I made sure were absolutely perfect. And you can't live like that for 4 years. You can't live like that for a whole Olympic cycle. But I promised myself I could live like that for 2.5, 3 months, and that's exactly what I did. And thank God I did, because it came down to those fine margins in the end.
Tom, everyone loves love. Are you still with this girl?
I am still with this girl. I'm seeing her tomorrow.
What a saint. I bet she must have been super supportive, right?
Yeah, she's kind of become like a very good photographer in the last few months, because anytime someone stops me in the street, they're always like, "Oh, you don't mind, do you?" And she's like, "No, go on then. Hand me the phone." So, we had a pretty busy summer. We're a bit, here, there, and everywhere. And obviously, I was doing all the stuff that you do after winning the Olympics, and a bit crazy. But I think she's had a really good time. She's been very supportive, which I'm very lucky.
That's amazing. We all love, and we love to hear it. So well done. The knighthood, please. So going into the Olympics then, the swimming aside, I had this conversation with Jazz, and we were talking about this, about an Olympics is stressful anyway, but then add on top of that, don't catch COVID, otherwise you won't be swimming at the Olympics. What is that like? What's the village like? What's just the whole experience of trying not to get too stressed about that, but also at the same time, it's a very fine line of not being able to compete?
It was literally like we were walking on a tightrope, coming into the Olympic Games. We got told if you get pinged on the app, if you show any signs of COVID, if you have a positive test, anything in the 2 weeks leading up to flying out to Japan, you will not go to the Olympic Games. If you get on the flight to Japan, which was a public flight, and you catch something on the plane, you will not be competing at the Olympic Games. If you catch anything in the village, whatever it might be. I could have done the heat and semi of my 200 free, tested positive that night, missed my final, would have had to isolate for 10 days in the village, fly straight back home, isolate further. It would have been an absolute nightmare. It was such an added pressure and stress. And given my pretty awful track record when it came to COVID infections, Dave said to me, he said, if you manage to make it on the blocks to that Olympic final, I'll eat my hat. That's what he always said, because he was like, I'm so convinced that some random thing is going to come along. And he said that was the biggest stress for him. The biggest stress was one of his swimmers getting caught out by some track and trace, or some, going into Sainsbury's and someone giving it to you, or just something ridiculous like that. We couldn't even live like normal lives in those 2 weeks before the games. We had a meeting, where was it, up in Stirling, I think it was, and they literally said, you basically have to be in isolation for the 2 weeks before Japan. That's how you have to live. You have to live your normal life in isolation. So it was a really, really tense, stressful period. And you were so wary of everyone who came near you. It's not a fun way to live. The training and leading up to the Olympics is intense already, and it's very demanding. But add that onto the mix, and it was like a whole extra pressure. So I'm glad we've got it behind us. And I'm glad no one on the team got COVID, no one got track and trace, nothing like that. I heard stories about some, I think it was Australian athletics who got track and trace the day before they're supposed to start competing. Imagine training for 5 years, and that's how your Olympic journey ends. It's stuff of nightmares, really. So I'm very fortunate that didn't happen to anyone on the team.
It is, and it's not a nice feeling, even from I guess not competing anymore. It's from work, or how the disruption that it can have to your life, but thinking, oh, I want to compete at the biggest event, or what I've been training for so long, and that can be taken away. I can only imagine what it would feel like going into that. But obviously it was a very different games, as we've said, and we don't want to dwell on that too much, because it was still the best thing ever to watch on TV, and it really brought the nation behind everyone. But even from a swimming perspective, having the morning finals something we're not necessarily used to, and just it was obviously a very different games. But standing on the blocks for the 200 freestyle final, what was going through Tom Dean's head on those blocks?
Well, I think the first thing going through my head was, bloody hell, Duncan's taken absolutely ages to get his jacket and stuff off, because he was taking his sweet time. Honestly, he was last one out. I was getting ready, and he was like, I'll take one jacket off, and then he'll have a sit down, and he'll take a shoe off, and then a sock off. I was like, come on, let's get this going. Let's get into it. But, each their own. Everyone's got their own tactics. Everyone tries to do their own thing to kind of dominate the race. So you just can't even think about that. So I didn't look at him, let him do his own thing, because I knew I was ready. I felt mint in the semi. I knew something special was going to happen. I couldn't wait to just dive in and let my body do the work for me. The prep had been perfect. The taper had lined up perfectly. I just knew something special was going to happen. And I just knew I had to swim the perfectly executed race. I had to get out in a 50-point mid, and it had to be comfortable. I had to work that last wall, all the stuff that you've been working on. And I just knew that something special was going to happen. And with a bit of luck on my side, then, maybe I'll be able to bring home a gold medal. And I knew that Duncan was going to be the only thing standing in my way. So it was a whole load of emotions going through your head. But I think at that point, you just resort back to your instincts. How many races have we done? How many times have we stepped on blocks and different races and gone through the motions? So you kind of have to just go back to almost like that, or think about all that, your age group preparations or your senior preparations. It's just another race at the end of the day, but it's another race where you're so fortunate because you're in the shape of your life on the biggest stage and you feel mint. So something special is going to happen. So yeah, it was quite cool. There's a lot going through your head at that point.
I mean, I just got goosebumps. It's just amazing to hear, what's going through your head at that time, because obviously we're at home watching, and it's just unreal. But for you, I mean, it's just something else, surely. But then seeing your family's reaction, that's always my favourite bit. So yes, your race was amazing, but watching your family video, Tom, was unreal, and to see that support was great. So obviously you've done a race, you touched the wall. At what point did you know you'd won? Did you have to check the scoreboard 5 times? Because I know I would have. And what's that feeling like after? I mean, I'm sure we've got a good idea, but I'd love for you to just explain that.
Yeah, I did have to check the scoreboard quite a few times. Obviously, it's such a tight one between me and Duncan. There was 4 100s in it, so I was obviously 144.22. He was 144.26. So I didn't want to read the wrong time and start celebrating like a mug, and then be told that I actually got the silver. So I was like, right, let me just get this right. Let me double check, triple check. All right, cool. Now I can start celebrating a little bit. So it was a bit, it's so hard to describe because it's so surreal. And it's the only time in my life where I've ever felt, I got out of the pool and I was like, this has got to be like a dream. I've got to wake up at some point, because it's something that I've been thinking about. You think about it. I always think about when I was lying in bed before I went to sleep, because you're just alone and you're just drifting off and you're in your own head, and you always think, what if, ever since I was like an age grouper, because you're doing a sport and you're always like, oh, I wonder what it'd be like to be, reach the pinnacle of this sport, and how exciting that would be, especially when you're doing all the hard graft and the hard training. Like, imagine if the greatest thing ever could happen to me in this sport. So when it actually happened, it's like, this can't even be real, because I'm going to wake up back in Bath at some point, because like it seems so crazy. And then you walk around the pool, you do the interview, I'm still in complete shock. And then I think it was once you got on the podium and you're like, they literally show you to the first place marker on the floor, ready to walk out. And you're just like, oh my God, this is actually real. I'm about to watch the flag go up in the middle with the anthem playing, and they're going to put an Olympic gold medal around my neck. And that's when it kind of really hit home. And that's when it actually hit home and my family weren't there. And that was the toughest thing I remember. The only time I actually got like emotional in this whole event was really when I was, that kind of dawned on me a little bit. So yeah, a real mix of emotions. And, I still think about it now when I'm in bed, and it still hasn't quite sunk in just yet. It's still a little bit surreal, but yeah, pretty nice feeling all in all.
I would love to have seen the reaction when you went back to see Nutty. Like, obviously, him being old coach, like, I would love to see, what did he say? Like, what was his reaction? Because I would have just loved to hear it.
Well, I saw him, obviously he was in the crowd celebrating. Jimmy was bawling his eyes out in the crowd. So they were, 2 ends of a spectrum. I saw Jimmy, once I got all my stuff, I saw him and he just gave me a big hug and he was bawling and stuff like that. And I think Dave just said, he pulled me aside, and I think he said, I probably can't use exactly the words he said on this podcast, but he said that was absolutely amazing. It'll change your life forever, but get yourself in the swim down because you've got the relay heat tonight. He said, I'll talk about it later. And he didn't actually pull me aside and properly talk to me about it until I'd finished the relay final and I'd been confirmed that I was finished for the meet. And that's when he pulled me aside and then we had a proper chat. He just said it was brilliant and stuff. And then I saw him. We went to I saw him at the start of September. So a month and a half, 6 weeks since I'd seen him in the airport. We went to the Wheelwright Arms in Moncton Combe for some lunch and a drink and catch up. And he came out of his car and he was like, Olympic champion. He was still so absolutely on cloud nine. Obviously, Dave, he lives and breathes swimming. So it was so special. It felt like such an honour to get his first Olympic gold medal. It was just like an absolute dream.
And so, like Jazz mentioned before, and obviously we've said it on this podcast, it wasn't just one gold medal you got, it was 2. One on your own and one as part of a really special team. So if you could just tell us about that as well, that moment, and also that moment of finishing, because obviously, I can't imagine what it's like to win a gold, but then again, straight into swim down because tonight we go again. What's that trying to sort of manage those emotions of like, oh my God, I've done what I've dreamt for so long to do, but then I need to calm down because I've got something else to do first.
It's tough, and I don't think I'd fully prepared myself for how tough it was going to be. And I think if you see my relay swim the next day, you can see the weight of the emotions and the draining, nature of the events that had happened the day before kind of took its toll slightly. I felt like I was swimming a completely different race. It felt like I hadn't tapered. It felt like I was in bad shape. It was a really, really tough race, that relay swim the next day. I didn't feel like myself, and I could feel that as soon as I got in warm up that morning. So that was a real challenge for me. That was the most challenging thing that I can take away from the whole Olympic Games. And I say it's a learning point to take away, but then I'll never be in the position of winning Olympic gold for the first time in my life again. So it's almost like I can never be in that position again. And I like to think if I ever reach these heights for whatever, be it World Champs or whatever competition, or maybe Paris, then I like to think I'll be slightly better prepared, and I'll be able to be more considered and not more mature, but just, have a better expectation of what's to come. The night after winning Olympic gold, I didn't really sleep. I was just, my head was all over the place. And when you got the relay final the next morning and you're not sleeping the night before from a combination of, adrenaline and all the caffeine and everything out of my system, it's like not the best combo, the night before an Olympic final. So it was, I held my own. I did a solid swim in the shape I was in and the feeling I was in. It felt worlds away from the swim the day before, the morning before, but I held my own, and complete credit to the three other boys on my team. Obviously, Jimmy with an amazing relay swim, Matt obviously an extremely mature swim considering his age in the event, and then
Matt
Duncan,
with a great third leg. You meant Matt?
Exactly, that too, of course, phenomenal. And then, Duncan, like a cracking. Well, as soon as Duncan hit the water, I was like, well, we're Olympic champions. There's not even a shadow of doubt in my mind. But, we've won the Olympics on the relay. It's just something we've been talking about for years. It's something British swimming's been talking about for years. We came fifth at the World Champs at the last major competition, which was, really not the result we wanted. But even Dave said then that's the best thing that could have happened, because it's going to spur you on for the Tokyo Olympics. So, yeah, I couldn't ask for anything more really than win Olympic gold with those three boys. So, yeah, a very special 24 hours for me.
How you say it, Tom, like you are still so young yourself, and first Olympics. And again, as you said, still like learning from different experiences. Like what you achieved is nothing short of incredible from your age, your experience on like that international level. It was just incredible to watch. And I know from Dave's perspective as well, and with training with Jimmy too, like it was just so great to watch. But coming home, because you find a lot of athletes come back home and you start to get the reality, oh, we're back to home. Whereas you were coming home back from that plane to kind of have a huge celebration with all your family and friends. It was kind of like reliving those moments again. How was it coming back on that plane and coming home?
Yeah, it was just like one massive celebration, to be honest. Like from the moment we got on the plane, even the plane was a massive celebration, to be fair. The whole thing was BA. It was all full of athletes flying back from the Olympics. So everyone was having a pretty good time on the plane, Nutty especially. So that was really, really exciting. We had a great homecoming. My family put on this huge party when I got back to Maidenhead and pulled down my road, and there were like 500 people there, all the local kids from swimming and half the town. The Teen GB homecoming was so special. I was just like non-stop for about 2 months. I was so busy, but it was like the best 2 months I could have ever asked for, because I'd done what I'd wanted to do, and I was able to celebrate. I think a lot of people talk about struggling with the Olympic blues and stuff when they come back from such a high level competition. But I think because I kept so busy and I was just enjoying myself so much that I, completely dodged that bullet. I think the only challenging thing was just reassessing why I'm training and what I'm motivating myself for, what's getting me up in the morning. Now that I'd achieved, the pinnacle by winning an individual gold medal, where I go from here. And there's really only Dave who set me straight on that path and said, you've won this, but now you really want to dominate the event. You want to show that you can do it again, and you want to really be like a force to be reckoned with within the swimming world over the next few years. So that's the new motivation. That's what's getting me in the pool and kind of getting me to work hard now. but yeah, it was a really, really special summer, and a 2 months I don't think I'll ever forget.
I think another motivation, if you wanted to, would be to go to Paris and do it in front of your family and friends this time. I think that would be pretty cool. But obviously, I was just going to ask the question of where are you at right now, and are you in a good place? Because obviously it's a complicated time. And there's also, Jazz has talked about, and we've talked about feeling like you should be happy, you should be grateful, you should be. But then sometimes as an athlete, there's different emotions that come in, and it's not really your choice, it's just what you experience. But it sounds like you're in a good spot right now, which is good, right?
Yeah, I'd say I'm in a pretty good spot. I feel like most of the time I'm in a pretty good spot. I'm quite fortunate in that respect. I think I'm very fortunate, and I don't struggle with things like mental health. I don't struggle with emotions being all over the place. I think generally I'm a pretty kind of laid-back guy, pretty happy-go-lucky. So for something like that to happen and have all my family and friends there and have this amazing summer with them, it was so cool. And it's so exciting going into a new season with all this success behind you. Dave's been on cloud nine since the Olympics. Jimmy's obviously buzzing. He had a brilliant time. Everyone's really excited. But swimming's got this whole newfound energy with a top sport in the UK. GB are like a force to be reckoned with in the pool now. So yes, this is very much just the start, and I think the next 3 years are going to be so exciting as well.
Well, we can't wait to watch you, Tom, and thank you so much for talking us through all your memories and stories. As from watching back home, I had goosebumps. I felt just what an incredible achievement you've done, and we're all so proud and absolutely loved watching you. And it's only 3 years, less than 3 years away now, and I know you've got such a huge future. But even just listening to you, the head that you've got on your shoulders, so smart and switched on. So thanks for talking us through that. Anything from you, Lauren?
Of course, there's always things from me. No, just Tom, thank you for giving us your time. Thanks for inspiring us over the summer. What you've done is incredible, not just for British swimming, but for all of us as a nation. Don't underestimate the power of what you've done there. And just thank you for giving us our time. Also, I hope the medals are in a safe, hidden place, right? You don't need to tell us where they are, but they're hidden.
Yeah, let's say they're hidden. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. No, but honestly, thank you, Tom.
No worries at all. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks so much for listening and for Tom for joining us. Listen back for the next episode, and we'll see you soon.